She swore she would never come back. On her very last royal engagement in Britain, standing in the drizzle beside a friendly biographer, Meghan Markle said the words out loud, "Never returning." That was the promise, and for 6 long years, she kept it. And yet tonight I can tell you that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, are moving back to the United Kingdom this very month, and their 2 children, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet, are already enrolled at a British school for September. Already enrolled. Hold on to that detail, because buried inside the official briefing that landed at 10 o'clock at night, there is one quiet, easily missed sentence that tells you exactly how this entire saga is going to end. I am going to show you that sentence before this video is over, and once you have seen it, every strange piece of this story will snap into place. So stay with me, because the mainstream royal press is giving you the sanitized version, and you deserve the whole picture. Let me take you to the moment it broke. It is a warm Wednesday evening in August 2026. At 10 o'clock at night, London time, 2 newspapers publish at once. The Daily Telegraph and The Sun, simultaneously both waving the word exclusive, both carrying the same facts, the same structure, and in places practically the same sentences. Now, I have watched royal stories break for years, and I will tell you my honest read as analysis, not as fact. When 2 rival titles drop identical world exclusives at the identical minute, that is not a scoop. That is a rollout. That is a placement briefed and coordinated, timed for maximum control of the narrative. Somebody wanted this story told a particular way on a particular night, and the papers obliged. And notice, while we are studying the mechanics, which papers received the gift and which paper did not. The Daily Telegraph is the establishment title, the paper read in the palaces and the shires. The Sun is the mass market megaphone. Handing the story to those 2 at the same moment buys respectability and reach in a single evening. My read as analysis is that the choice of outlets is itself a message to the family. It says, look how smoothly we can work the British press when it suits us, the same press we spent 6 years describing as our tormentor. The couple who made hostility to the media their founding grievance have just executed a flawless media operation. And if you find that contradiction delicious, you are not alone. Every accredited royal correspondent in London noticed the same thing tonight, whatever they are too polite to print. Here is what the reporting actually says, and these parts are solid. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex intend to relocate from the United States to Britain before the end of August. The family will live in a private residence, not a royal one, believed to be outside London, with whispers pointing toward the Cotswolds. Prince Archie, who is 7, and Princess Lilibet, who is 5, are enrolled to begin at a British school in September. There are, and I quote the shape of the briefing here, no current plans for either the Duke or the Duchess to resume official working roles within the royal family. King Charles was informed on Sunday, the 16th of August. The move was not discussed when the couple visited him at Highgrove, his Gloucestershire home, back in July. The family will keep the Montecito mansion in California and their holiday property in Portugal. The Duchess will keep running her lifestyle brand, as ever, from her new British base. And the security arrangements, the single most explosive question in this whole affair, have not been disclosed at all. Read that list again in your mind, and ask yourself the question every palace courtier is asking tonight. Why now? Why like this? And why did the King of the United Kingdom find out on a Sunday in August, roughly 2 weeks before the removal vans roll, when his own grandchildren already had school places waiting for them? To answer that, you need the full timeline, because this story only makes sense as the final chapter of a 6-year gamble. So let me rewind the tape. January 2020. Harry and Meghan announced they are stepping back as senior members of the royal family. The press calls it Megxit. The late Queen Elizabeth calls a family summit at Sandringham, her Norfolk estate, and out of that summit comes the ruling that has governed everything since. There would be no half-in, half-out arrangement. You could not represent the crown on Monday and sign commercial deals on Tuesday. The couple lost their Royal Highness styles for commercial use, Harry lost his honorary military appointments, and off they flew, first to Canada, then to California, to the wealthy enclave of Montecito, where they bought a sprawling mansion for close to 15 million United States dollars. Then came the era of the megaphone. March 2021, the Oprah Winfrey interview, watched by tens of millions, in which the couple alleged that an unnamed senior royal had raised questions about the skin color of their unborn son, and in which the Duchess spoke about experiencing suicidal thoughts inside the institution. December 2022, the Netflix documentary series, 6 episodes of grievance aimed squarely at the family and the British press. January 2023, the memoir Spare, which sold in enormous numbers and detailed private conversations, private arguments, and a physical altercation with his brother William. Every bridge that could be burned was burned in high definition, and the couple collected very large checks for the matches. And running underneath all of it, the security war. Harry fought a long, expensive legal campaign to force the British government to restore his automatic police protection, the armed officers he lost when he stopped being a working royal. He lost. And after that defeat, he said, in words I am paraphrasing only slightly, that he could not see a world in which he would bring his wife and children back to the United Kingdom. Could not see a world. Those were the stakes he himself described. Britain was unsafe. Britain was hostile. Britain was the place his family fled. That was then. So what changed? Because as of tonight, the same man is bringing the same wife and the same children to live in the same country he called unsafe, with no announced change to his protection whatsoever. When a person reverses the single most emotional position of their public life, there are usually only 2 explanations, the heart or the wallet. Let us examine both, and I will tell you plainly which one I believe, and I will label my opinion as opinion, because that is the difference between this channel and the courtier press. Start with the wallet, because the numbers tell a brutal story. The Netflix relationship, once a giant overall deal reported to be worth around $100 million, was quietly downgraded late last year to a first-look arrangement, which in Hollywood language means the studio is no longer paying you to sit there, it is merely agreeing to glance at your ideas before passing. The Duchess's cooking and lifestyle show was not renewed for a 3rd season after its audience collapsed in the second half of last year. Their big summer film project, released to cinemas in early August, came and went without troubling the box office conversation. The Spotify partnership died years ago after a handful of episodes. And, as ever, the jam and tea and flour sprinkle venture floods inboxes with promotions at a pace that, to my eye, looks less like a brand riding a wave and more like a brand paddling hard against one. Now, that last sentence is my analysis, my read of public behavior, and you are free to disagree. But here is a fact you can check. Polling in Britain consistently places Harry near the very bottom of royal popularity, with Meghan below him. And their American profile has cooled to the point where their names no longer move the cultural needle the way they did in the Oprah spring of 2021. Hollywood is a town that forgives almost anything except declining relevance. The invitations thin out, the partnerships lapse, the phone calls take longer to be returned. And when that winter arrives, every fading star in California history has faced the same choice: reinvent or retreat to the one stage where your name still tops the bill. For Harry, that stage has only ever been one place: Britain. Now the heart. I want to be fair here, because there is a genuine human story inside this circus, and pretending otherwise would make me no better than the machine I criticize. King Charles is 77 years old, and he is living with cancer. He has been in treatment for a long time. Harry has spoken openly about wanting reconciliation with his father while there is still time, and the 2 men have reportedly been talking by phone with growing warmth. In July, at Highgrove, the king met Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet for the first time in 4 years. 4 years. Think about that as a grandfather, not as a constitutional lawyer. Two children grew from toddlers into school-age human beings, while an ocean and a feud sat between them and their grandfather. A dying man wanting his grandchildren nearby is not a conspiracy. It is the oldest story in the world. So which is it, heart or wallet? Here is my verdict, clearly marked as my opinion. It is both, and the wallet set the schedule. The longing for home is real, I believe that. But longing does not enroll children in schools. Deadlines do. And that brings me to the detail that this entire story pivots on. The thread almost every other channel is stepping straight past. You cannot enroll two children in a British school in a fortnight. Think about what a school place actually requires. Applications, assessments, registration deposits, uniform fittings, term calendars. For the kind of discreet, high-security, high-fee school this family would need, add vetting, add site visits, add long waiting lists that ordinary millionaires sit on for years. Places for September do not materialize in the middle of August, which means this move was planned weeks ago at minimum, far more likely months ago. Now hold that certainty up against the official briefing, which states that the move was not discussed when the family sat with the king at Highgrove in July. Sit with the picture that creates. A son brings his children to see their grandfather for the first time in 4 years. The grandfather is in cancer treatment. The tea is poured, the reunion photographs are taken, the visit is declared a key step on the road to reconciliation. And according to the palace's own account, the son already knows, or is at the very least deep into planning, that he is moving his family to England within weeks, and he says nothing. The king then learns of it on a Sunday in August, days before the story is handed to the newspapers. If that account is accurate, the silence at Highgrove is the real story of this entire week. Not the moving vans, not the school run, the silence. Because it tells you the operating model has not changed since 2020. Decide first, plan in secret, inform the palace at the last possible moment, and let the announcement do the negotiating for you. That was the Megxit playbook, sprung on the family in January of 2020 before agreements were finalized. Here is the part most people get completely wrong. They think the question is whether Harry and Meghan have changed. Wrong question. The announcement itself is the answer. The method is identical. Only the direction of travel has reversed. Now, let me parse the palace language for you, line by line, because royal statements are written the way diplomatic cables are written, and every word is load-bearing. The briefing says the king naturally welcomes the opportunity to see more of the Sussex family in a private and personal capacity. Read that twice. Private, personal. Two adjectives doing the work of a drawbridge. This is a grandfather saying yes to grandchildren, while the institution behind him says no to everything else. And then comes the sentence with steel in it. The king is clear that there will be no alteration to the Duke and Duchess's role and status as private individuals and non-working royals, in keeping with their clearly expressed wishes and agreements over past years. In keeping with their clearly expressed wishes. That is the palace quietly reminding the world and reminding the couple that this exile was chosen, requested, and agreed. And then, the ghost of Sandringham rises in a single phrase. There is no half-in, half-out option. 6 years later, the late Queen's ruling is still the wall the whole house is built on. For the newer viewers, let me recap in plain language why that phrase, half-in, half-out, carries so much weight, because it is the constitutional heart of everything that follows. The British monarchy runs on a simple, brutal trade. Working royals receive public money, state security, palaces, and the platform of the crown. And in exchange, they surrender private commerce. No brand deals, no streaming contracts, no memoirs settling scores, because the moment a royal can monetize the family name, every handshake becomes an invoice and every charity visit becomes an advert. That is what the late Queen understood at Sandringham in January of 2020. You cannot rent out the magic. Harry and Meghan wanted a hybrid model, a bit of crown, a bit of commerce, and Queen Elizabeth said no, cleanly, and finally. Every collision since, the titles, the security, the money, flows from that single ruling. So when tonight's briefing repeats that there is no half-in, half-out option, it is not a slogan. It is the palace holding up the one document that has kept this whole arrangement from collapsing into a celebrity licensing business. The question that should keep courtiers awake tonight is simple. Walls only matter if someone is willing to defend them. Is anyone? Because here is the uncomfortable truth about the man defending it. Charles is the sovereign, but he is also a father in the winter of his life, and those two roles are now pulling in opposite directions. The sovereign's duty is continuity, the protection of the institution he spent 70 years waiting to lead. The father's longing is for Sunday lunches with grandchildren he barely knows. Critics of the king, and there are many in the royal commentary world tonight, say that welcoming this return without conditions, without any public acknowledgement of the Oprah allegations or the Netflix series or the memoir, amounts to weakness that stores up an enormous problem for his heir. Defenders say a sick man reaching for his son is beyond criticism, and that a monarch who let his boy remain a stranger would deserve harsher judgment than one who opened the door. I will give you my own view, plainly labeled. I think the king has chosen the father over the sovereign. I understand why. And I think the bill for that choice will not land on his desk. It will land on William's. One more layer of stakes before we move on, because the audience for this drama is not only the family, it is the country. Support for the monarchy in Britain is softest among the young, and every survey of royal popularity for years has told the same story. Catherine and William near the summit, the Sussexes at the very bottom, below even the disgraced uncle in some measures. A monarchy is a confidence trick in the noblest sense. It exists because enough people agree it should, and confidence is spent every time the institution looks like a soap opera instead of a state. That is the real cost of tonight. The reason grown constitutionalists were groaning at their screens. Not the jam, not the Cotswolds, the spectacle returning to permanent residence. Spare a thought, too, for Queen Camilla, because almost nobody covering this story tonight has. She has spent tonight watching her husband, a man in the middle of cancer treatment, absorb the news that the son who described her unflatteringly in a best-selling memoir is moving back within reach of every family occasion. Whatever her private feelings, and I will not pretend to know them, her public duty now includes pouring tea for that reunion. The people inside this institution are not chess pieces, however much this channel and every other treats them as such, and the human cost of proximity is about to be paid weekly, at close range, by people in their 70s who thought this war had gone quiet. So let us talk about the Prince of Wales, because everything about this story eventually funnels down to one man and one decision. William and Catherine were informed of the move. That is the entire palace comment on their behalf. Informed, not consulted, not delighted, not looking forward to welcoming. Informed, the word you use for a weather report. The brothers are, by every credible account, barely in contact. There has been no apology for Spare, no apology for the Oprah claims that painted the household as cold and bigoted, no walking back of the documentary. And now, the man who wrote in detail about their private confrontations is moving with his own alternative court into the English countryside, into the same small world of schools and churches and county events that William and Catherine inhabit with George, Charlotte, and Louis. Put yourself inside William's position for one moment, as a thought experiment. You are the heir. Your mother's memory is the most powerful emotional force in British public life. Your father is ill. You have spent 6 years building a fortress of normality around your 3 children, and your estranged brother has just announced, through a newspaper placement you learned about like everyone else, that he is moving back within driving distance with 2 children who are your children's first cousins and who sit in the line of succession, 6th and 7th, right behind your family and their father, who is 5th. Every county show, every Christmas at Sandringham, every national moment from now on carries a new question. Will the Sussexes appear? Will the cousins meet? Will the cameras catch a frost or a thaw? Your entire adult strategy, distance, silence, dignity has just been checkmated by geography. Let me make the stakes concrete with a thought experiment. Imagine you are a courtier tonight, and your job tomorrow morning is to draft the grid the master calendar that coordinates royal engagements so that stories never collide. For 6 years, your grid had an ocean built into it. Whatever the Sussexes announced from California landed in a different news cycle, a different time zone, a different world. From September, that ocean is gone. A Sussex school gate photograph can now collide with a Catherine Hospital opening in the same afternoon news bulletin. An unannounced Sussex charity visit can now step on a state occasion by accident, or whisper it by design. The grid, the invisible machine that has protected the monarchy's message, discipline for decades, now contains 2 unguided actors it cannot schedule, cannot brief, and cannot stop. Ask any palace press officer, off the record, what tonight means, and that is the answer you would get. Not emotion, logistics. The nightmare is logistical. And Christmas is the first battlefield. Sandringham at Christmas is the great annual photograph of royal unity, the walk to church, the crowds, the children waving. If the king, softening by the month, extends an invitation to the Sussex family, William faces a choice with no clean exit. Attend and hand the world reunion pictures that reward the entire maneuver. Decline and spend the season with the Middleton family while the press writes about a crown divided. My prediction, offered as prediction and nothing more, is that the Wales family will politely find themselves elsewhere this December, and the palace will call it scheduling. Watch for that word, scheduling. Now, I promised you an unexpected connection, and here it is, because this exact drama has happened before, almost beat for beat, and the way it ended last time is the reason the palace is so frightened this time. Go back 90 years to 1936, the abdication crisis. King Edward VIII gives up the throne for the woman he loves, the American divorcee Wallis Simpson. Sound at all familiar? An adored, charismatic prince, a glamorous American bride the establishment cannot digest, a rupture with the family, and then exile. The couple become the Duke and Duchess of Windsor and settle in France, and for the next 3.5 decades, they orbit the monarchy like a ghost ship. The Duke writes a self-justifying memoir. The couple give a famous, grievance-soaked television interview. He presses his brother, King George VI, endlessly for money and for a role, any role, and the palace holds one line above all others: distance. The Windsors are received politely, occasionally, briefly, and they are never ever allowed back inside the working institution. Historians largely agree that this cold, unglamorous policy of distance is a big part of why the monarchy survived its greatest modern crisis. Now overlay the 2 stories and look at where they split. Memoir, check. Television confession, check. American Duchess, check. Exile abroad, check. Endless questions about money and titles, check and check. But here is the divergence, and it is enormous. The Duke of Windsor never moved back. He never enrolled children in an English school. He had no children at all, no small princes and princesses in the line of succession to bind him permanently to the future of the crown. Harry does. Archie and Lilibet are not footnotes. They are 6th and 7th in line to the British throne, and from September they will be educated in England, growing up English, 2 heartbeats from the institution itself. The Windsor playbook, the strategy of distance that saved the monarchy once, has just been made physically impossible. That is why I keep telling you this is not a lifestyle story about a family fancying the Cotswolds. This is a structural event in the history of the House of Windsor, the first time since the abdication that a breakaway royal has forced his way back inside the perimeter. And the children are the key to the whole lock, so let us stay with them, because this is where the calculation becomes either very touching or very cold depending on your view of the players. For 6 years, Archie and Lilibet have been raised almost invisibly. Photographed from behind, glimpsed at holidays, unseen by the public, and, for 4 of those years, unseen by their own grandfather, the king. British media operate under a self-governing code that protects royal children from paparazzi coverage. And to be clear, that protection is right and no decent person questions it. But schooling in England changes the family's whole visibility equation. There will be first-day photographs, carefully released. There will be sports days and nativity plays and, eventually, teenage years lived in the most photographed country on earth for royalty. The children will become real to the British public in a way California never allowed, and a cynic, which tonight I confess I am, would note what that reality is worth. Royal children who are strangers can be quietly minimized by a future king. Royal children the public has watched grow up, who wave from pavements and charm crowds, are a very different proposition. My analysis, and I mark it clearly as mine, is that this move is, among other things, an insurance policy written in school uniforms. It roots the Sussex line into British soil before the one man who could dig it up inherits the spade. Because make no mistake about the calendar hanging over all of this. Charles reigns, but William waits, and the whole royal commentary world understands that the next reign will be leaner, tighter, and far less sentimental about the Sussex question. A future king has real levers. Working roles are in his gift. Patronages are in his gift. The shape of the balcony on great occasions is in his gift. Even styles and titles for the wider family can, over time, be reshaped by the sovereign. Nobody serious expects children to be harshly treated, and I am not predicting that. What I am saying is simpler and colder. Whatever the Sussexes hope to secure, a role, a status, a permanent perch inside British public life, the odds shrink every single year, because the king who might say yes is elderly and unwell, and the king who comes next has every reason in the world to say no. If you wanted to make this move, you would make it now, not in 5 years. Now, the timing is not mysterious. The timing is the message. There is also a quieter piece on the board that deserves a moment, and that is Portugal. The couple bought a property there, on the coast south of Lisbon, in a resort development favored by wealthy Americans, and they are keeping it. Europe-based, an easy flight from London, outside British jurisdiction and British cameras, practical families keep a holiday home, strategic families keep an exit. I simply note, as an observation about structure, that this move has been designed with a back door built in. The Montecito mansion stays, for now. The Portuguese bolt hole stays. The British residence is described as a base for an extended period rather than a forever home. Whatever else this family has learned in 6 years, they have learned never to burn the boats. Remember that when the first difficult winter arrives. Which brings us to the question the briefing so carefully refused to touch: security. Remember, this is the hill Harry chose for his longest war. He said Britain was not safe for his family without armed police protection. He spent a fortune in the courts trying to force the government to restore it, and he lost. And after losing, he said he could not see a world in which he would bring his family here. Tonight, the official line on security is a shrug. Arrangements not disclosed, no announcement of any change. So one of two things is now true, and both of them are stories. Either the family is returning under private security alone, in which case the entire years-long legal crusade collapses into theater. The danger was survivable all along, and his own past words become the sharpest weapon his critics own. Or, quietly, somewhere behind the scenes, arrangements are being upgraded at public expense, in which case the British taxpayer is about to fund the protection of 2 commercial celebrities who do not work for the crown, and that argument will burn through phone and shows and front pages for months. Watch this space harder than any other. Whichever way the security question resolves, it will set the temperature of this whole return. And then there is the shadow that stands behind every frame of this story, the shadow that never leaves: Diana. Next August marks 30 years since the Princess of Wales died in that Paris underpass, 30 years since 2 boys walked behind a coffin while the world watched. The 30th anniversary will be a national moment of remembrance, an avalanche of documentaries, books, and retrospectives. Word in publishing circles is that her brother, Earl Spencer, the custodian of her childhood home at Althorpe, has his own book arriving this autumn, and this very summer. On the family's visit to Britain, the Duchess of Sussex publicly shared photographs from a visit to that same childhood home. I am not going to tell you what is in anyone's heart. I will simply lay the objects on the table in a row. A return to England now. Children in English schools by September. A Spencer book this autumn. The 30th anniversary of Diana's death next summer, with her younger son, her image and echo, living on English soil for the first time in 6 years, available for every commemoration, every documentary, every front page. If you believe that sequence is coincidence, I admire your innocence. My own read, marked once again as opinion, is that the coming year was always going to belong to Diana's memory, and her son has just made certain he will not be watching it from California. So where does this actually go? Let me give you the framework I use, because a story this big deserves better than vibes. I score the American era first. The 6-year experiment this move quietly declares over. Bet number 1, streaming. A launch worth a reported $100 million, reduced last year to a first-look arrangement, with the flagship cooking show ending after 2 seasons. Bet number 2, publishing. One genuine colossus in spare, one of the fastest-selling memoirs ever printed, and then silence, with the loudly rumored follow-up nowhere in sight. Bet number 3, lifestyle commerce. As ever, launched with enormous fanfare, still standing, still selling jam and tea, but nowhere near replacing streaming money, whatever the sources insist about how it is thriving. Bet number 4, live events and goodwill, the Invictus Games above all, the one unambiguous success of Harry's public life, beloved, respected, and telling in itself, because it is the most royal-shaped thing he does. Add up the scorecard and the American era reads as one triumph of memoir, one enduring charity, and a long, slow leak everywhere else. That is not my malice. That is the arithmetic. If the business framing sounds cold, forgive me, but royalty is, among other sacred things, a licensing operation, and this family understands that better than anyone alive. Think of the crown as the most protected brand on earth, centuries of accumulated trust, and think of every royal title as a franchise agreement. The Sandringham ruling of 2020 was, at bottom, a franchisor terminating a license for off-brand use. The 6 American years were an attempt to prove the license was unnecessary, that the name Sussex could stand alone in the open market. Tonight's move is the market's verdict, arriving home in packing crates. The product lines that sold, the memoir, the grievance interviews, all drew their value from proximity to the crown, from secrets carried out of the castle. The product lines that had to stand alone, the jam, the shows, the podcasts, struggled the moment the castle stopped supplying the plot. Strip away the palaces and the protocol, and you are left with a plain commercial truth every franchise owner knows. The value was never in the operators. The value was always in the brand. And tonight, the operators are moving back next door to the brand. Now, the road ahead, 4 doors, and you can decide which one you believe. Door 1, the quiet life. They truly live privately in the countryside, school runs and jam jars, no cameras, no maneuvering, possible, and if it happens, I will happily eat every skeptical word of this video on camera. Door 2, the creep. Private status on paper, but a steady drumbeat of visibility, charity appearances that look ever so slightly royal, sympathetic profiles, presence at the edges of national moments, each step small enough to deny, until the half-in, half-out arrangement exists in practice without ever being granted on paper. Door 3, the formal thaw. Reconciliation deepens, the king extends something real, and some rebuilt role emerges while he lives, presenting William with an inheritance he never agreed to. Door 4, the second rupture. Proximity breeds friction, friction breeds briefings, briefings breed another rupture, and the family that could not live together on 2 continents discovers it certainly cannot live together in 1 county. My money, stated as opinion, sits on door 2, the creep, with door 4 lurking behind it, because the creep is simply the Sussex operating pattern of the last 6 years pointed in a new direction, and patterns are the most honest biographers of all. Before I close the doors, give me 1 more minute for the event that will tell us which door we are walking through, because it is closer than you think. Harry was already scheduled to be in Britain in the middle of September for his charity commitments, including his beloved awards evening for seriously ill children, the kind of engagement where, to give the man his due, he is genuinely excellent, warm, unscripted, and adored by the families in the room. Under the old arrangement, that would have been a flying visit, a hotel, a homesick weekend. Now it becomes something else entirely. The first public appearance of a resident Sussex on British soil, days after the school gates open. Study everything about it. Who accompanies him? Which photographers are accommodated? Whether the palace acknowledges it, ignores it, or counter-programs it with a Wales engagement the same afternoon. Whether the Duchess appears at his side or stays behind the new hedges. First appearances after a reset are never accidents in this family. They are position papers performed in public, and Septembers will be read in every royal household in Europe. And so you can hold me to account. Here is my watch list, the 5 signals that will tell you, faster than any commentator, which way this is truly breaking. Signal 1, the security answer, public or private, because it prices the whole return. Signal 2, the Christmas guest list at Sandringham, and whether the word scheduling appears in a Wales statement. Signal 3, the first officially released photograph of the children on British soil, who takes it, who distributes it, and what it is time to accompany. Signal 4, any Sussex presence, however brief, at a national ceremonial moment, a remembrance event, a state occasion, a balcony-adjacent sighting, because that is the creep made visible. And Signal 5, the language of the next palace briefing, whether the phrase non-working royals survives contact with the first family emergency, the first hospital scare, the first moment when a grieving or celebrating nation expects to see every Windsor standing together. Clip this section, timestamp it, and bring it back to me in a year. I will stand by every word or correct it on camera, which is more than the courtier press will ever offer you. And now, as promised at the very top, the sentence, the quiet line inside the briefing that tells you how this ends. Tucked into the reporting, past the school places and the Cotswolds whispers and the private residence sits this. If there are ever discussions about any future role for the Duke, those discussions would take place between him and his father. Read it again. Not, there will be no future role. Not, the door is closed. But a signpost describing exactly who would open it and how. Palace language never leaves a door ajar by accident. Every previous statement slammed it. No half in, half out, no alteration. Clearly expressed wishes. And then, at the bottom of the page, a hinge, freshly oiled. That single sentence is why I told you at the start that this story is not a homecoming, it is an opening bid. The residence is private, the status is private, the school is private, and the door to a role is, for the first time in 6 years, described instead of denied. So here is where I leave you tonight. 6 years ago they left, saying Britain had failed them. Tonight they return, and the palace greets the family that called it broken with a welcome, a warning, and one sentence shaped exactly like a key. Whether that key ever turns is now the biggest question in the House of Windsor, and it will be answered not in Montecito, not on Netflix, but in a Gloucestershire drawing room between a sick king and the son who came home. When the answer comes, you will hear it here first, and you will remember tonight as the night the endgame began. Share this video with the one person you know who still thinks this is just a house move. And keep your eyes on the middle of September, because Harry is due at his charity engagements in London within weeks of the boxes arriving, the first public test of the new arrangement. And I will be watching every second of it with you. Until then, remember what I always tell you. In this family, nothing is ever just a house move.